So I actually kind of struggled with this one because a lot of the music I listened to when I was a teenager, I still kind of do now. Even the embarrassing stuff, I still really like. But then I thought of one album I actually listened to when I was about 11, so I'm kind of cheating, with which all of my friends were totally enamored by, and that was Eminem's Encore. We'd heard all of the singles on music channels beforehand, from the previous albums, and we thought Eminem was just, at that time, the best person in the entire world. So we flocked to get this new album when it came out, and obviously we didn't have reviews or even the internet back then, so we didn't know the critical consensus of it was bad, but we loved it because tunes like Ass Like That, as an 11-year-old, is like the peak of comedy. Listening to a rapper on a record saying that, people make his pee-pee go doing, 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 that's just good stuff, you know what I mean? Like, when you're that age, it's just chef's kiss stuff, okay? But obviously, then you get a little bit older, and stuff like that is a little bit embarrassing. And it's not even because of necessarily the songs themselves. Like, some of the songs are actually okay. It's more that when I listen to them, I feel like that 11-year-old boy again. And let me tell you, 11-year-old Josh, he wasn't a good lad. He thought he knew better than everyone else, and he thought songs like Toy Soldiers and Mockingbird were the most emotionally riveting, mature things he'd ever heard. So it's not necessarily the album, although the album isn't great, it's that it takes me back to a time in my life that I look back on and I'm quite embarrassed by, because me and my friends were kind of, we were annoying kids, you know what I mean? We were annoying kids thinking we knew better than everyone else, thinking we were so mature, thinking we were wise beyond our years because we were listening to Eminem before we should. And I can't help but detach this album from those feelings, and I'm kind of ashamed of those feelings. So even listening to it right now, before, recording this to do a bit of research, man, like, a lot of it's really funny, a lot of it's really bad, a lot of it's aged terribly, but the biggest issue is, it reminds me too much of myself.
Okay, so for mine, it has to be something that I was into as a child when I was first exploring all sorts of things, screamy and heavy, and oh my god, my parents can't stand it, therefore I love it. So it has to be Seether. It's got to be all things Seether. Now, the album I first got was Disclaimer 2, because they did a whole bunch of different albums, and at the beginning, they re-released their first album for the second time, or something. I don't know, that's when I came in, but songs I used to love, like Gasoline and Needles, Stick the Needles in, and what else did it? 69T or something. I did have a reference point on my computer for all this, and now I can't think which one it was. Oh, that album's the one that has Broken on as well, which was on the Punisher movie, the one where Sean, whatever he's called, main man Sean Morgan, is singing with Amy Lee, and they did that weird duet version of Broken, because I'm broken. It's pretty much all that. It's Creed, it's Seether. It's all those bands that, James Hetfield said "cheer" once in 1997, and there was just a whole chunk of them came out of that. It was him and Eddie Vedder, Mr. Hetfield, Mr. Vedder, saying, "you're here" and "cheer" and all that kind of thing, and it just became a whole genre. So it's Seether for me. I try to go back to those old albums, and I can like them in a fun way, but it's just it's the screams that he does. There's an album they did after that called Karma in Effect, that just starts with this really like this one riff, and then he just goes for ages, and and at the time you're like, he's really going for it, this is proper intense stuff, my mum wouldn't like this, therefore I'm loving it. But the vast majority of it, when you go back to it, is just been done better by every other band that ever walked the earth. So it's got to be them. Seether, I still love you, if Mr. Morgan, if you're watching. But I've also moved on to Alter Bridge and Trivium. So 2003 is the real 2020.
So the album that I absolutely loved when I was a teenager, but will never touch again, is pretty simple, and I imagine it's quite a common one among people of my age. It's Limp Bizkit's Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavoured water. Now, the reasons for me never listening to this thing again are pretty simple. Number one, I'm 32 years old. Number two, this album is 75 minutes long. 75 minutes long. That's at least twice as long as any rap metal album needs to be, let alone a Limp Bizkit one. And the problem with it is, man, you get through all these songs and rolling, yeah, it's fun, my generation, whatever, my way, okay, sing along, whatever. But then you've got stuff like Boiler that's 7 minutes of self-loathing and angst, and it's like, Fred, man, I didn't sign up for this. I wanted you fanning around in your red cap, doing your little raps, saying the F word 52 times or whatever it is in Hot Dog, doing your rolling dance and all that garbage, taking it to the Matthews Bridge, whatever. I didn't come here for angst. I didn't come here for self-pity. I also didn't come here to spend over an hour listening to you rapping, pal. Other than that, though, it's fine, I guess.
Right, well, my album that I loved as a teenager but will never ever go back to is one by the Kaiser Chiefs. Yes, the Kaiser Chiefs of all people. I know, blasphemy, what a dickhead. Who likes the Kaiser Chiefs? Well, let me paint you a picture. 17-year-old me. Started liking music probably around about 14, 15, properly anyway, really getting into it. There was just a little push of bands, wasn't there, from around 2004 through to 2007. This was all happening. And I used to do two things. I used to try and find these little indie bands, and I used to try and watch Soccer AM as regularly as possible. Soccer AM would always plug bands like this, like the Kaiser Chiefs, the Twang, the Enemy, the Pigeon Detectives. But the Kaiser Chiefs were one of them bands where that first album, a lot of people will probably be like, there's some great songs on there. I mean, like, they had Every Day I Love You Less and Less, I Predict a Riot, This Is the Modern Way, and they had Oh My God, which is a good tune by itself, but ultimately better version on Mark Ronson's album Version, where Lily Allen's on it. We wouldn't have got that without this album. So there are some tracks you can probably listen to on there and maybe still enjoy, and I'm sure if they came on at the indie disco, I'd be right there with you. But unfortunately, the Kaiser Chiefs are, how do I put this? In a nice, like a polite way? I'm not sure I know how to. They're just a bit shit, really, aren't they? I found them to be a bit fake, and when I figured out at 17 that they weren't the indie band that I thought they were actually kind of this pop indie band, but actually they wanted to go and be commercial. Like, look at where Ricky Wilson is now. The lead singer, Ricky Wilson, or I don't know if he still is, but he was the guy on The Voice, wasn't he? And I think that tells you everything you need to know about where they wanted that band to go. And I was kind of keeping them in this collection with all these other indie bands, but they just weren't of the same ilk at all. Like, they used to get played at the same time along with the likes of like the Killers and the Arctic Monkeys, and they are just a different type of gravy to the Kaiser Chiefs. So, unfortunately, Kaiser Chiefs, and especially Ricky Wilson, you're never going to get listened to again. That album will never be listened to in full again. I'm sure I'll still have a little dance. But for anybody who wants to really enjoy the Kaiser Chiefs, go and listen to Lily Allen's song on Mark Ronson's album Version, where she covers Oh My God. It's much better.
An album that I loved as a teenager but wouldn't really listen to now is probably Only by the Night by Kings of Leon. At the time, I loved that album. There were songs like You, Somebody, Sex on Fire, Revelry, Closer, 17. It was just a very, very good album in my opinion. I remember going to see them at Leeds Festival, V Festival, purely just to play this one album. And in the years after that, I've listened to their old stuff and realised that this album was kind of like a spit in the face to their old fans, because it was a completely different sound. It kind of like, quote unquote, put them in the mainstream and in the spotlight. And if you know two things about Kings of Leon, they don't like the spotlight. I don't know why they even perform live, because it looks like they hate it every single time. But I do remember at the time, they were playing, just before they was about to play Sex on Fire, Caleb Follower, the singer, was just like, please don't leave after we play this song, because I know that you're gonna. And at the time, I didn't really think two things about it because I was like 10 at the time, but like now I realised that even the band didn't like that album, which is very weird to think. And since then they've brought out albums like Walls, Mechanical Bull, and they've kind of like, I don't even think they know what their sound is anymore, which is very weird. And You Somebody is now the staple X Factor audition song. Like, I'm sick of hearing that song. And it's a shame because it was a very, very good band. And I can't lie and say that I was a fan of them before Only by the Night came out, but it made me interested in them. And then I realised that the album that made me love them is also potentially the album that made me not really want to listen to them anymore, which is very weird to say, but cheers, Kings of Leon.
Hello everybody, it is Ash beaming in for this Chatty Places on which albums you used to listen to as a teenager that you would not listen to now. Right, so this is not a title that spoke to me because I live in the 2000s where pop punk roamed free and nu metal grew on the trees and you could pluck it and eat the fruit and it was all wonderful and good. What I'm saying is I listened to a lot of the old bands that were around then still now, so I had to really think hard and dig into this one. And oh boy, did some memories come flooding back, which was, I was big into the whole emo scene. I liked My Chemical Romance, I was big into Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco, all that sort of thing. I had that whole phase. But what it led into was this dark period, a very dark period where crunkcore came around, and I was very on board for crunkcore. So bands like Curve, Breathe Carolina, and one such, Broken Side. Now, the album I'll never listen to again, which became very clear upon listening to Bree Bree once more, was BC13, which is technically an EP, but that was my world for a long time. I loved BC13. I loved backcombing my hair as large as it could be. I loved wearing neon and having bracelets up to here and 9 necklaces on that were like a big Jacobean ruff up my neck. I loved the whole scene thing, bows in my hair, like all sorts. So BC13 was like a cultural touchstone, the monolith for me was BC13. And I would never touch it again because crunkcore is the worst thing that has ever happened to planet Earth. And I'm ashamed that I bought into it. And I am shamed by its existence. And I am shamed that it is on my iTunes. But just if you imagine hip hop being crossed with screamo and everything about it being the worst possible factors of anything you like about hip hop and anything you like about screamo and anything you like about anything it's not there. It's not there in crunkcore. It's all been taken away and ruined and stamped on. And it's horrible. And it's horrible. Yeah, BC13. It haunts me. It really haunts me. And if you just want like a little taste of the quality of the lyrics, there's the verses for Bree Bree, their song which swept the nation. Don't cut this pig. Don't cut this pig. Bree Bree, Bree Bree, don't cut this pig. It's bad. All of it's bad. The whole album's bad. Never again. The dark times have passed. No.
What album did I love as a teen but will never listen to again? Well, I haven't really grown up that much, so I still listen to things I listened to as a teen. But there are definitely 2 candidates. The first one is Chef Aid, the official album from South Park, which famously had Chocolate Salty Balls on it, and also Sailing Away by Cartman. It was good fun at the time. It's just for like kids, just funny, isn't it? It's just outrageous. And honestly, I listened to that way more than I should have when I was a teenager, and like mid to older teenager as well. But the standout candidate, the real standout, is from my Insane Clown Posse period, which I believe we all have at some point in our lives. And it's The Great Milenko, which is probably still their best album, which is saying something. Came out in 1996 when I was just sort of 12, 13, very much too young to listen to that sort of music, but I did definitely want to be a killer clown, a gangster, with an A on the end. And just didn't understand any of it, but I thought, these men, Violent J and Shaggy 2 Dope, are speaking to me in a way that music hasn't done before. And indeed humans haven't spoken to me before. And it was just, they said things that you couldn't get away with on the radio, which was great at the time. But now I look back and I think, what on earth was going on there? But at least TikTok has proved, by falling in love with Insane Clown Posse once more, that I am actually at the forefront of all fashion trends. So that was a good revelation.
So, right, it's kind of a difficult video for me to do this one because I'm slightly older than most people in What Culture. So when I was a teenager, music was like good. I've got nothing to be ashamed about, really. Like when I was a teenager, it was like when I was an early teenager, it was new metal, and then it kind of started moving into landfill indie. And as anybody who is over 30 will tell you now, both of those genres still absolutely slap. But we used to have, me and my mates used to have this like weekly schedule, right? We would go to Ignition at the Cooperage on a Monday, then we would go to Skate at the university on a Tuesday, have Wednesday off because we're not monsters, Stone Love Digital on a Thursday, then Bulletproof back when it was in Red's Bar on a Friday, then Saturday we either do like Brighton Beach or a gig or something like that. And what they all had in common, even though there were different music nights, like Monday was like deep indie, like the Von Bondis and Black Rebel Motorcycle Club and stuff like that, and then Tuesday was pop punk, and then Thursday and Friday they were both just like middle of the road, like classic 2004 to 6 indie music. But the one song they all played without exception, they all would play the Kaiser Chiefs, and as a result we loved the Kaiser Chiefs, and we were dead excited when their first album came out called Employment. We went and bought it, and we sat in my mate's car, right, and we listened to it the whole way through, and afterwards, like, I sat there and I was like, oh, do you know what, it doesn't annoy me at all really that all the songs have a bit that goes and the reason I would never listen to that album again is because I was wrong. It really does annoy me that all of those songs have a part that does that, because it's really, really annoying. So, yeah.